Hello, my name is David Braun. I've been an appraiser for almost 40 years. Most of that time I've owned and managed a 15-person appraisal office in Tennessee. In 1997, I started a company called Automated Valuation Technologies. This company addresses odd but important concepts for appraisers. The philosophy of this company is pro the appraiser in the field. The objective is to provide them with the automated tools they need to be successful. I've developed a regression software program called Regression Plus for real estate professionals about 8 years ago. I've developed regression training and seminars. I have no formal degree in statistics. What you learn here will benefit you no matter what regression program you use. So this seminar is not about selling my products. If you want to do that, you can go to my website and look around. You can call me later. But in this webinar, we want to just talk a little bit about regression. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to develop a plan. We're going to talk about competency, and we're going to perform a quick regression analysis. Now my website is www.avttools.com. You can email me at david@avttools.com. Now the title of this short webinar is I have a regression program, now what? A lot of you have recently purchased some type of regression program, and even if you purchased one of the programs that does a lot of things for you, you still need to understand a little bit about what's going on in the background. So again, you don't have to have my software in order to benefit from this short webinar. So this video is for anyone who wants to learn more about regression analysis. It's time to make a plan. A lot of you have told me you want to be able to extract line item adjustment rates with regression analysis. But we need kind of a bigger goal. And what your plan should be, hopefully you would say, I want to be better at analysis in general. I want to be both more efficient and more effective at analysis. I am an appraiser who is trained to understand market behavior and how that behavior affects value. I want to expand my expertise to include a better understanding of all types of analysis related to the valuation process. So this is more the plan I want you to have as the big picture. I want to know more about statistics that can help me perform analysis more effectively and efficiently. Now this is an appropriate goal that will include extracting line item adjustment rates with the regression analysis. In other words, we'll still get to that, but we're not going to start with that. Okay. A valuation analyst is an appraiser who is both an expert in market behavior and related analysis skills. Now let's talk a little bit about competency. We want to have knowledge in the theory of analysis and basic statistics. So we need some knowledge. We need to be proficient in the use of spreadsheets. We're going to need some special skills that we don't use all the time, and that is how to scrub data, market modeling, regression analysis, and residual analysis. And we're going to have to practice. We're going to have to practice. We're going to have to actually perform regression analysis. Now I want to warn you, when you perform a regression analysis today, if you're brand new to regression analysis and you're beginning to put some data in a regression program and run it, Okay, here's the warning. Perform your regression analysis after you have completed the appraisal report. Do not include the regression analysis in the report or work file at this time. So what we're saying here is, because you're not competent yet in using the regression program, you should basically not use it in conjunction with an appraisal today. Now, you will be able to eventually, but so when you do an appraisal, then when you're done, then run your regression analysis. You might want to include all those regression analysis in a file folder. I mean, something that you can save somewhere, whether it's electronic or hard copy, but do not put it in the work file or in your appraisal report. Okay, let's begin by trying to build a robust model that will predict the value of other properties in the market. Okay, so right now we're going to go ahead, as part of this webinar, we're going to run a short and a quick regression analysis, because that's what I want you to do. And I want you to do it not to extract line item adjustment rates yet, but let's begin with just trying to get values. All right. Now, in competency, we also want to think about resources. What are some resources that we have? All right. Dr. Lust, he put on a webinar for the Appraisal Institute called Regression Analysis is Becoming Mainstream. Are you prepared? It's a really good webinar to watch for those of you that have not decided if you want to get into regression and invest your time in studying it and buying a regression program and learning to use it. Now, you'll have to go to the Appraisal Institute website, then to their education, then to the section called pre-recorded webinars. And that's going to give you some information to help you decide, do I want to do this? And even if you've just bought your software, it's going to give you some information on what you should be doing. Okay, the Appraisal Institute has some seminars, continuing education seminars on Excel spreadsheets. You can also take a seminar at a local community college. So one of the things that I want you to do is become, I wouldn't say proficient, I would like you to be proficient in a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, but you need to be able to move around in it. And like I say, the Appraisal Institute has 2 or 3 seminars, different levels. I'm teaching the beginner residential seminar in a couple weeks, for example. So be sure and be able to move around in Excel. Okay, now at my website is a good resource. Be sure and go there and watch some of the videos. Even at the, I think if you move your cursor to the top right, there's some frequently asked questions. It's actually kind of little cartoon characters, but they tell you what regression will do and won't do, because a lot of people have misconceptions about that. All right, now those of you that have the software that I sold, you have training material in that, so you should be doing your homework in that. Some of you don't have that, and you're going to have to research other places. McKissick School, I did a 7-hour CE online class called Fundamental Concepts of Analysis, and it talks a little bit more. It doesn't really talk so much about regression, it's just analysis, and helps to explain what probability is and some other basic statistical concepts. Now, Dr. Lust has another webinar that's a little more advanced. You're probably not ready for it today if you're just beginning, but after you've run 30 or 40 of these regressions with real data, he's got a webinar, probably a 45-minute webinar that will be appropriate for you to take. It's called Regression Modeling: Why Bad Results Happen to Good Appraisers. And again, you'll have to go to the Appraisal Institute site to find that. Now, there's a book put out by the Appraisal Institute. It's called An Introduction to Statistics for Appraisers. And there is a related 3-day seminar, if you're probably to be what I would call a valuation analyst, you would need to be familiar with the information that's taught in that seminar. Now, you could be self-learned, you could learn it yourself, or you could go and have structured learning. So I advise that seminar. I advise you to take that seminar. I wouldn't take it today. I would go ahead and get it set up, take it in the next few weeks. All right, now a book that I really like, and here's a picture of it. It's called The Practice of Statistics, 4th edition. You can buy that from most anywhere that sells books. It's actually like a senior in high school or maybe a first-year community college book on statistics. This is really a great book for you to have as a reference. So consider that, The Practice of Statistics. Mine that I got is the 4th edition. I came upon this book because my daughter, who at the time was a senior in high school, took that class. All right, now records. Now you want to keep some notes, and again, we're still kind of talking about competency. Keep notes of whatever you read, maybe article names and who wrote them. Whatever you watch, like this particular webinar, write it down. The name of it, the date you took it, and probably who put it on. Have that, make a record of that. Yeah, whatever seminar you take. If you go take a seminar, write it down, keep a record of it. In your experience, like I said, you don't want to, when you run these to begin with and you run these regression, you don't want to include them now in your report, in your appraisal report or your work file, but I would keep them in a folder so you can say, I have performed 32 regression analysis. Okay, then all of that information goes into your qualifications so the user of the report understands how you became competent, so they believe you're competent. Different types of regression analysis requires different levels of competency. To do what we're going to do today, which is to find just a value, we're not extracting line item adjustment rates. That doesn't take so much competency, but you've got to have some. Now, I've got here some data that we're going to run in the regression, and it's got here the sales price, the gross living area, the bedrooms, the dates, the garage, how many garages it has, garage bays, and its age. So our goal here is to find the value, and we want to try to build a market model that's robust. Remember, now market modeling was one of the things you're going to have to learn more about. Some things we want to think about. Let me scoot this over so I don't leave anything off the screen. Some things you want to think about is, and this begins for you to think about the regression assumptions, or things that if they're not true might cause your regression not to be correct. But as a true beginner, we're not really going to get into those, but there's some things you need to think about. Number one is all of the sales should be from the same market. Now, on my website, and I think you had the website, if you go to activities and then articles, I have an article called Market Delineation. You need to read that article. It's very important. This is one of the fundamentals. If you don't do proper market delineation, none of this is going to work right. Okay? So it has to be, think about the data coming from the same market, but not like you search for sales in a, not like you search for sales to put on your comparison grid. You want to get very similar property, and we don't, that's not important here, but it does need to be from the same market. You want to think about, is my data accurate? If you have any doubts about it, you're going to have to stop and fix the data. You need accurate data, okay? So these are some things that you're not going to hear about much, but as a beginner, you need to understand these things. Is the data accurate? Okay, we want a contrast in property characteristics. We want 1 garages and 4 garages. We want contrast, but it has to be only limited to what the market has. But we don't want to pull a group of sales out of our market that are very similar. We want contrast in our property characteristics. You can begin to think about curvilinear versus linear. You'll notice over here we don't have any land. I just left the land off, and I tried to pick sales, in this case, pick sales that the land's all similar. So people, you know, I don't have 3-acre tracts versus a half-acre. So in this case, I've left the land out. Now, to find values, you can actually do that a lot of times in real life appraising with regression. Okay. Now, the reason that it's on the line, I'm talking about land with curvilinear, is because oftentimes something that has a diminishing rate of return is going to have a curvilinear relationship with value. Okay. Curvilinear relationship with value. And we want to begin to think about causation versus just a relationship. Like the gross living area may have a relationship with value and sales price, and we can measure that, but we're not going to know if it has causation. So we want to begin to understand that we're not saying that for sure regression isn't going to prove to us, it's not going to prove to us that there's the cause of the sales price is necessarily gross living area. What it's going to prove to us statistically is that there's a relationship or there's not a relationship. Now, this is the advantage of the appraiser in the field versus a AVM, an automated valuation model, because usually appraisers know which things are actually causing the value. Now, if you're a model in a computer, you don't know that. So there's a lot of advantages to being an appraiser, and there's a lot of advantages to being an appraiser who uses statistical analysis. Okay, now let's think about what we don't have too. We want to think about what we don't have. We don't have the land in there. Do you see quality and condition in there? They're not in there. Why aren't they in there? I would include them if I had them. I don't have good objective quality ratings or good objective condition ratings, and that's going to impair my analysis to some degree. Now, Fannie Mae knows that, and that's the reason recently, and I say recently, what's it been, 3-4 years now, they asked the appraisers to objectively rate quality and condition. And if I had that data, I would certainly use it. That's why I'd like to get my hands on some of the Fannie Mae data and see how much that helps me. So what I'm trying to do is how much the quality, maybe if I'm in the same market, maybe there's some similarity in quality. Condition, depending on what age, if my properties are around 5 years old, condition may not matter so much, but when you get to a 20-year-old house or a 30-year-old house, condition's huge. So we want to understand that I expect there's some limitations to my analysis because of things I don't have. All right, now what we're going to do here, and I didn't write these down, so I'm going to write these down right now, is I have 2 screens, but since I'm recording, I can only use 1 screen at a time. My effective date is going to be 5/1 of 14. The gross living area is 1,800. This is my subject information, by the way. Bedroom, there's 2 bedrooms. The garage, there's 1 bay. And my age is 12. Okay, so now if you've got your regression program, it's not going to be just like mine. You may have one very different. But even if it's different, this is what's going on in the background. Maybe you have one very similar to mine, but it's not exactly. That's all right. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I am going to copy this data. It's the way I put it into my program, the Regression Plus. Now, all of this data is scrubbed except the date. Now, we're not really going to cover scrubbing, but everything here is scrubbed, and scrub means it's a number because the regression is a formula. It has to be a number. Now, if you use Excel, for example, it automatically converts these dates into a number. Used to be it didn't. A few versions ago, you had to scrub it. In mine, you have to scrub it in the Regression Plus. So the only one I have to scrub is date. If I was doing several things, I would mark it, especially if you have two monitors. In yellow, the ones I have to do, I'm just going to do this again. I'm going to copy this again. I think it was already copied. Okay, let's bring up the regression program. And remember, yours is going to look a little bit different. Not a big deal. All right, there's my loader. It jumped to the other screen. All right. Okay, now I am going to scrub one thing. I'm going to change the date, and it knows it's the date field. I'm going to pick out it's the date field, and I'm going to do day since sale. So it's from sales from the effective date, which we said the effective date is 5/1/14. I'm going to use this because it's going to put in, keep the dates in the right format. Okay, there's nothing else I need to do. This is just some other stuff for more advanced. We don't need it. I don't have to scrub anything else, so that's just stuff we don't need to see today. Now, when this opens for the first time, and I can see I didn't bring in the sale numbers, that's all right. Normally, you'd bring in like the address of the property. For some reason, when I did this example, I didn't highlight the sale number. It would normally be here. Doesn't have to be. Normally, all this stuff would open up over here, but because I practiced this once, it knew it said, oh, it looks just like the last one you did. It brought it over. So now we're going to hit next, and we're going to go into the regression program itself. In this one, the regression sets up, and I haven't put in the subject information. We'll just stop and do that right now. What it's running on right now is what the average of everything is. And for our bedrooms, for the subject is 2. So somewhere you're going to have to enter the subject information, or it's going to have to go read it off of your form. So the garage, in this case, we had 1 garage. The age was 12. The days since sale is 0 because my effective date is now. And the gross living area for the subject is 1,800. And so I've got my subject information in. And we're not going to cover all this stuff. Maybe later on I'll do another webinar that's just about this software for those of you that have this software. But let's take a look here. The first thing that I see is information here. I also have a residual scatter plot, and it may be different than the one in your software. This one just plots plus or minus as a percentage, a little bit different than some of them. Plus or minus is a percentage, and then the date is down here. So the first thing we're always going to do in any regression analysis that lets us do it, that we have the control to do it, is we are going to look at, let me get up here to the top, we are going to look at the sales. So for example, I'm going to click and get in this case it's the low, so it's 96 to 161. Oh, that's okay. What I'm making sure is one of these isn't $1 million property. Bedrooms, I've got 1 2-bedroom and all 3 bedrooms. Now that bothers me because I don't have enough contrast there. I only have 1 2-bedroom or only 1 hit. So we don't have a contrast in the bedrooms. Okay, so we're going to make a mental note of that. The garages, we go from 1 to 3, so there's 1, 2, and 3. Our ages are from 15 to 25. So we want to be sure there's no blanks in our data. Everything looks right. Okay. Some of our sales are a little over a year old, it looks like, and some are 17 days. That was the way it was. The gross living area, 1,400 was to 53 is small, 2,400. That could be too much of a spread and diminishing rate of returns, but that's fine for right now. Now, this is actually run a regression analysis. So for the sales price, it's predicted, this one sold for 161. It predicted 152,000. It's got a residual of 9,600. So these are the residuals. The residual is the sales price minus the predicted value. Now I'm going to come up and look at our model. Here's the variables or the property characteristics. There's an intercept. We'll talk about the intercept in another seminar, because or another webinar, what I want you to be able to do is simply run through a regression analysis. We're not going to do very much here. Okay, now the p-values are important. I noticed there's one in red here. I'm going to turn it off. Okay, now that's my bedrooms. Remember, we noticed that we didn't have good hits. So the bedroom is going to have to be turned off. I'm going to turn off the p-value. There's some rules, and we'll get into maybe more in a future webinar. If two things measure the same thing, we would turn it off, and some other things we would do. Now, if you're a Regression Plus user, the days since sale, that means for every day going backwards, the values went down $24 a day, which means coming forward it's a positive. So the $24 or here, the minus 24 actually means that's appreciation. And we can calculate that on a per year, which in this case, if you multiply $24 times 365 days, that's like $8,700. My average sales price is, like on our sales, is 117. So it's about a 7% appreciation rate. Okay, now the red here, because in this case, this is does the subject deviate? And in this case, the age, we were a little bit younger. We were younger than most of them. We were 12 years. Most of them were older than 12. The day since sale is almost always going to be marked as a deviation because we're almost always appraising effective date. It's always going to be the newest property. We would like our subject to be very similar to all of the properties. Okay, so with these done, we can look at how many observations we had. We had 30. We've got an indicated value of 132. Now, if I'm doing this and I just appraised it, now you want to compare that to your appraisal. How close was it to your appraisal? And you want to learn how close it is to all the appraisals you do. Now, the R squared, 0.87 is very high. Adjusted R squared is very high. This is a normality test, the Anderson-Darling normality test. If it's over a 0.05, that's good. If I have 30 sales or more, it's really not even important. Now, this is important. The average residual, when we talked about residual, the sales price was 161 here. It predicted 152. So it was actually 5.94% off. That's the absolute residual. It's actually 5.94% off, so it's one of these. I can see that my worst ones are 8% off, the lowest ones are about 8. Most of my sales are in here within plus or minus 3%. The average is 3.8%. Now, we talked about a robust model. All we care about in a robust model is that the model, I guess the opposite of a robust model would be a fragile model. And we want a model, basically one test is that it would work really well for most any property in the market. That's what a good definition would be. I can look here at the value 132 and this average residual 3.8. If I just take one and unhook it, stays pretty close. I can just, sometimes if you have one that's not robust, you can undo one or two sales and all of a sudden what you were getting 130, it jumps to 120. That would not be a robust model. So I like this model fine. So what we're going to do is just stop here, and what I would do is record my sales price versus what you did. Now, we want to think about, and we have a report, but we can't see the report in the Regression Plus till we answer some questions. So let's answer these questions. How were the number of observations? We had 30, so that's acceptable. You could have 12 and it's acceptable if the quality's good. So we're not getting into how many are, but I've got to fill in this sheet. How accurate is the data? You're the only one that knows that. Maybe you know your MLS is pretty good. Maybe you check some. Maybe use some that you've appraised before. How did the model predict? And the model actually predict very well, because we had the average absolute residual 3.8%. That's actually super good. If that's between 5 and 7, that's good. So that's actually excellent. How did the subject fit? Remember, we said that we know that it's probably acceptable, but it's one of the newer houses, and it's one of the smaller, maybe the smaller houses, whatever it was. What about reasonability of the model's outputs? And what we mean is by the model's outputs, let's see if we can move this. We're going to get over to our variable, and we can see that our gross living area, it said about $65 a square foot. The age, it took off almost $1,900 a year. Those look kind of reasonable. If you're an appraiser, you know if they look reasonable. You don't have to rely totally on your p-values, okay? So as an appraiser, I think they're probably good. What about the weights applied by the model? And in this case, the gross living area is 50% of the subject's value after the model's run, or 59%, excuse me. The age is 17%. I like that. So I feel really good about the weights. Now, what about the R squared and the adjusted R squared? Well, they were 0.8 over the 0.87. Anything around as high as that is actually probably as excellent, to be quite frank. What about the p-values? The lower the better. None of these are really, all of these are less than 0.05. So I would say the p-values are probably excellent. I think they're all pretty low. Yeah, I'm sorry if I get one of these wrong. We didn't test a curvilinear. There's a curvilinear test in this. And I guess we can go ahead and test it since I forgot to do it. Let's pull this up so I can, yeah, there it is. So I can hit the OK, so it'll save those. Now I'm going to go to the valuation, trend analysis. Let me bring this over to open up on the other square. I'm going to go to the garage. Now, what I'm looking for is if this green line is greater than, say, a plus or minus 3%. Either way, there could be a curvilinear relationship. Let's look at age. Let's look at day since sale. Now see here, but it doesn't dip. See, don't get fooled by the scaling of the chart. Okay, don't get fooled by that. It's still below 3%. It doesn't get above 3. Could be a little curvilinear, but it's not bad. And remember, we were concerned about the gross living area because there was quite a bit of difference in the size. It went from about 1,450 up to about 2,500. But again, there shows there's probably a little curvilinear, but it's not over 3%, so I'm not concerned with it. When those numbers get over 3%, I get a little concerned. So now let's finish answering these questions. All right, so I felt like I checked my curvilinear. They were acceptable. The Anderson-Darling was certainly acceptable here because I have at least 30 sales and it was over. Overall, I feel good, acceptable to good, and I could make some comments that if I feel like this is just acceptable, okay, but I feel like probably it's pretty good analysis. I could put some comments in there. Now I need to say okay. Let me get that bigger. I usually use it on a bigger screen. Now you could in the regression, plus some of yours may have it. If not, you can make your own report. We're going to do a print preview, and I need to bring it over to this other screen. Here we go. Everything wants to open in the other. And what it's done now is it's made a report for me, and it's going to be multi-page. Let me just open a couple pages up. And then it's going to tell about these things. And when you're ready to make this a part of your report, this could either go in your work file or in your appraisal report. So what we've done then is, for those of you that have just got started with regression, we've made a plan that we got to think bigger than just using this to extract sales. We got to think bigger than just using regression. We want to learn about statistics and how it can help us in everything. If we're doing paired sales, if we're doing anything we're doing, if we want to learn to use statistics. So we have a plan now. We talked about competency. We need to become competent. You can't do it in a day or two, but you can do it, depending on how much work, you can do it in certainly within several weeks of taking some of these webinars, seminars, and every time you do an appraisal, stop and do a regression. Right now, we only tried to find the regression We only used the regression analysis to help us find value. And then in our next webinar, we'll go just a little bit further. Thank you very much.